For many of us, understanding our soul's purpose is at the heart of some of our biggest questions. Why am I here? What did I come here to do? Am I on the right path? As we are about to learn today, one place for discovering our life purpose roadmap is literally at our fingertips. We are all born with information to help us understand our life journey right in the palm of our hands. Meet Barbara Gale, a spiritual life coach who uses a scientific approach of palm reading called life purpose hand analysis. Using her intuitive guidance, Barbara brings her study of the hands and blends it with her own insights and understanding of spiritual evolution to help illuminate and support her clients. Barbara's superpower is helping to decode the messages in our palms and fingers and translate those messages into understanding key themes and intentions that we intended in this lifetime. Her goal is to help shine a light on our soul's intentions so we can better understand ourselves and our journey. In her words, fingerprint analysis defines the paradox between the personality and your soul's agenda. Barbara's training comes from the International Institute of Hand Analysis, founded by Richard Unger, who changed palmistry forever. She studied for 14 years with Richard and 5 of his master teachers. Barbara believes that our fingerprints are a virtual map of our sacred gifts and can help us all better understand ourselves and illuminate our life's journey. There is so much to talk about. Welcome, Barbara.
Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Robyn and I have been wanting to talk about this subject for the longest time, and we've always said, we just don't know anybody who does this. And lo and behold, I stumbled into you down here in Texas. And so we're just so glad to have your wisdom and your long training in this to really help illuminate your word to our audience.
It's such a pleasure meeting you and reading for you.
And we're going to be sharing some of that, but let's dive in. Let's start at the very beginning with the work that you do, that you define as scientific palmistry. And why do you call it that?
It's called scientific because it is repeatable and it is reliable information that when we see these lines in our hands, these are the experiences a person's going to be having. And with most lines in our hands, we're learning about how, through trial and error, what's too much of an energy, what's too little of an energy to find the just right. So we're playing out the Goldilocks rule with everything in so many layers in our hands. So we're trying to balance. The training that I have has been based on a database that was founded by the Institute of Hand Analysis, International Institute of Hand Analysis, founded by Richard Unger. And we'll talk about him a little later, but it was founded on the database of over 50,000 hands.
Wow.
Looking at what is a person experiencing when they're having these different markings in the hands. So that's why we call it scientific. A lot of folklore around the ancient art of palmistry, and I run into a lot of palmists that really do believe that you can tell how many children you're going to have and what your relationships are going to be, how many marriages, and that has not been proven to be reliable from a scientific perspective. But everyone wants to know what the M is in their hand and how many kids they're going to have and romances.
Or they go right to the lifeline.
Yeah, totally.
The lifeline, yes.
We're going to dig into that, but how did you get into this world? What's your journey leading into this?
Thank you for asking. It's a question a lot of people ask. How would you find this, right? I didn't even know. I was looking for a modality, if you will, for my expertise and my gifts, because I was in transition when I happened upon this, and I went to college. I had gotten out of a divorce and moved to Austin to follow my son. And I went to a metaphysical fair. And the metaphysical
What was your background prior to this?
I was an artist, and I had been a professional graphic artist and art director and designer all of my life. For over 30 years, I was identifying myself as an artist and as a creative. So I didn't know I had this other thing that was coming about, but it was this longing to have more meaning in my life that kept calling to me. There was something unfulfilled about just doing the art. That just wasn't enough. I wanted to go deeper. I have very long hands and very long fingers.
You do?
As a person who wants to go very deep. It gives you the depth of attention span to go very deep. Someone with very short fingers will not choose something that's not simple and easy. We're talking about the proportion of fingers to the palm. So everybody's proportion is going to be what determines whether they have long or short fingers. So I went to this lecture where ended up being a teacher for me, who was giving a lecture on hands and how fingerprints show us our life journey. And I was like, I got to hear that. And she had everyone hold up their hands. And at the time, I was just fascinated, all the hands that went up around the room, how different they were. And she looked at mine and she said, oh my gosh, she's so empathic. I just want to go sit in her lap. And I was like, oh, she nailed me. And so I went to her booth and I inquired more about what it was going to take to learn more about her fingerprint readings. And I ended up buying a reading with her. That 2-hour reading was 2 weeks later and recorded, but it was life-changing for me because up until then, I had been doing women's work and empowerment work, working on relationships, and it was not deep enough. It was not getting the results I wanted. I wanted to be able to offer spiritual alchemy, and I wasn't there yet. And this reading told me more about myself, and I had more understanding about myself in that 2 hours than 4 years of therapy, where I was trying to figure, why am I so dysfunctional in a relationship? And this gave me the answer. And I was like, oh, okay, now I understand. And so it really also helped me focus on the challenges that I had in relationship and what I needed to do to grow myself in that direction. I was like, this is too valuable not to learn how to do this. How do I learn this? And I signed up for classes she was giving them. And get this, she was in Oregon. She was teaching it one time this year in Austin. And I said, let's do it. So it was fated for me to find this. And I didn't know I was looking for something, but there was no hesitation. And everything I do is like with great caution and a lot of deliberation because I have to analyze it all. And this was just, no, I've got to do this. So I did it. And I didn't know I was going to become a hand analyst at the time. Spirit knew that was where I was going and was pulling me forward to it. And so she showed me the whole other aspects of my hand that were trying to come online, and she could see it. And there was in my print, there was a bulge on this side of my hand. This particular section of the hand is Pluto, and which is the transformer. And for me to have this bulge in that side of the hand was a target of saying, I want your attention here. You're trying to transform into this new personality. And she was able to decode that and interpret that for me. So that was pretty life-changing.
I know we're going to talk more about all of this, but is there a very big correlation between astrology and palmistry?
I do see quite a bit of correlation. I have not done the deep study of astrology that I would like to. It's a big subject. From my understanding of the hands have archetypes, and I look at the different elemental archetypes, and a lot of those archetypes of the fingers and the different lines in the hands, the different areas of the hands are based on the planets and really the Greek myths, the mythology behind it. So both of those they have in common. What I find a little different is that you have to know a lot about how to work with astrology to really be able to have a directional map out of it and develop a practice where you can understand how to work with it. And I have been working with that for the last maybe 5 years, where I've developed a practice of studying it on a regular basis so that I can learn something about it. I had an astrologer that I did a reading for that she said, I've been studying astrology for 12 years. And you just told me in a half an hour everything I've learned. And it was in my fingerprints the whole time. And she was shocked. And so it was really fun to hear that as a confirmation. So I do feel like there's a lot of correlation. And the hand shape tells us a lot about the predominant characteristics that we're showing to the world. And often often there'll be like two elements that are pretty dominant there. And I see those as kind of our preferences of the way that we're expressing ourselves. And when I name those in my readings to my clients, they go, oh yeah, my astrology, I am a fire sign. I am an air sign. And they can identify that, oh yeah, that must be correct because I know my astrology says that too. So I get a lot of that
Validation.
information.
Yeah, that's incredible. I just can't understand how the whole world doesn't know this by now. Astrology is taking the world by storm. It seems to me like all this information, it could be another layer of validation of who we are and why we're here. Can you talk about when you look at a hand and start to help someone understand their story? Where do you start?
I look at it as little building blocks that I'm working towards. So first of all, I'm looking at the personality, which I look at the hand shape, and then I look at different markings in the hands. But one of our key factors is our emotional self, and that is determined in our uppermost horizontal line. If everybody looks at their hand, you'll see coming from the pinky side of the hand, there'll be a marking that comes across. Well, where it ends over here in this territory tells me what characteristics you are. If you are a water personality, emotionally, an air, an earth, or a fire. And those endings tell me what your emotional needs are and what you're here working on. And what's really fun is that it tells us who we're attracted to, our attraction factor. So opposites attract. And when you look at it from the hand's perspective, the water and earths are very attracted to each other. So if you're a water personality and you're being true to yourself and you're showing yourself to the world as a water personality and emotionally, you're going to attract an earth personality that's emotionally an earth person, and vice versa. And the same with fire and air. So it's really fun when you get a really complicated personality that has got 3 heart lines like you and I do, Karen. You're more adaptable, so it's a little harder for us to figure out who we are, for one. And 2, who we're attracted to, because we're so adaptable, we can adapt to who we are with instead of being true to ourselves. We kind of have to be true to ourselves to be able to be the attractor of who we're most
Wow,
compelling.
I'm already hearing certain things because Karen did not share, which we share everything pretty much with each other. So I'm excited to uncover a little bit about what she learned from her reading with you.
Right there. It was so interesting. So talk about the 4 elements, Barbara, what they are and how they're different.
I'm going to show you a quick little visual. I'm looking at hand shape here. And this is a water hand. Do you see how tall and skinny it is?
Yes.
This is a fire hand. Do you see it's more rounded at the bottom? This one has relatively short fingers to a long palm. Those are different. The earth hand is very square, very boxy, short fingers, and it has very few lines on it. And then you have air. And air sometimes has a square palm with long fingers, and sometimes it has a long palm with long fingers. Water is very sensitive, very feeling. Yes.
Can you see Robyn? I bet she's fire.
I can see proportionately. It may be that you have a combination of water and fire, maybe. The proportion looks a little more fiery, but the sensitivity looks like water. But it could be some air too. I'd have to really see close to, I think. So water is sensitive. Air is the thinker, analyzes, the observer, wants to intellectually be stimulated all the time. They're visionary. They're exceptionally mental and often have some kind of gift that they're using that scientific brain that becomes the inventor or the astrologer or the scientist. But they're highly analytical and they need other air people in their life because they're looking for deeper meaning.
That was me. So I'm a water air. I'm right in between.
Yes, you're a water and air. And so you're a feeler and you're an analytical. So you analyze your feelings. And I have both myself. And so we have an innate ability to understand people because we're feeling them, we're empathic to them, and then we're analyzing, we're curious about them, right? We want to know, how do we work? How does human behavior work? almost always when I see at any age that combination, the person is interested in human behavior. They're interested in becoming a therapist or a counselor, or they want to help. Water personalities are coming from a place of, I just want to help. I want to make the world a better place. Very humanitarian, and they're very psychic, empathic and psychic. Fire hands are very interesting. They have a very quick uptake. So they understand what's going on really quickly. They have a quick processor, let's say. So they can walk into a room and go, oh, this conversation just went down and I understand what's happening here. I got the vibe. So they're very instinctive. And they also are the people you want to put in charge of this is what's needed next. And they can delegate. They can be in charge. They are often very gifted at finding the skills that they need and honing those skills. They're very in the moment, and they tend to be very demonstrative of their feelings. They're not filtered. They do not have the ability to filter what they're thinking comes right out of their mouth. And often that becomes a difficulty for them to have friend relationships, that they're not too direct for that person. The people that are around them, either they have to love them for how direct and everything they are, but they don't have filters. So they're experiencing life in the moment, and they're taking everybody on their roller coaster with them. If they're happy, everybody's happy around them. If they're not happy, everybody knows it. Now, Earths are very skilled and very talented. They're very down to earth, and they're builders. They want to produce. They want to get things done. They're super good at systems and structures and figuring things out and problem solving. And they want to be highly productive. They are priding themselves on what they get done, and they want to be appreciated for that. But they're often really gifted with their hands. So there are chefs and our gardeners and our builders and our florists and our hairdressers and our massage therapists. They love to have this earthy relationship with nature. So you can see there's a lot of contrast between each one of those. So if you have a combination of water and air, you've got that feeler and the analytical. If you've got a combination of the analytical with an earth, you have a builder who's highly loyal, wants to get things done. And when you put it together with that analytical air, you have this very loyal person that's just got to get so much done, and they're good at teaching. Airs are really good at teaching and communicating. Earth's not so much. So you put these different skill sets together and combinations, and you get a whole different archetype. If you put water and earth together, you get mud, right? And a personality wise, you get a very sensitive person who's very introspective and does not want to deal with the outer world so much. It's real interesting to study the different archetypes. And so that's the basics. And then the inner wiring of the emotional self has the 4 different archetypes as well. If you have a water ending, which would end really close to this finger, if you drew a line between these 2 fingers and you do maybe a half an inch away, anything that's in this category over here is going to be a water. They're going to be very highly sensitive. They're going to want to give and help, and they don't know when enough is enough.
Your left hand to your pointer and your middle finger, like in that area,
Yes.
there's
if
a
you
line.
draw a little line between those 2 fingers straight, so it has to go on the other side of that line, and it has to get close to the top of the fingers.
Yep.
Now, if it's this part before you and I split, this is well away from the top of the hand. It's not crossing the line. That's an earth heart line. And the earth heart line is highly independent, needs to do things their way.
Sounds about right.
We have a way we want to do things, right? So
Yep.
it's like your non-negotiable need as an earth is the freedom to do things your way. So our decisions are going to be made based on, do I have wiggle room? Do I have choices here? Is there somebody micromanaging me? That's a no. I want to be independent, and we thrive in that environment. So we make great entrepreneurs.
That's where I'm at right now. So
You
But
got
see,
the
even
skill
right
set.
there, isn't that a wonderful affirmation?
Yeah.
That even in entrepreneur world is not easy, but just to be able to have that affirmation, that's already on her little life blueprint of what she really wants to do in this lifetime.
What was yours, Karen?
Now, the fire one is a little harder to see. If you look at a fire line is going to hug this finger or end underneath this finger. So it's a very sharp curve. Do you have that as well?
I do.
Robyn? So you have fire and earth. Wow.
Totally
I
makes
think
sense.
you can definitely confirm that because you see that in her personality. So fire has to do things they're passionate about and will not consider doing anything they're not passionate.
Yeah.
Everyone else is okay. I can manage to do that. I can put myself through that. All right. I will put my feelings aside. Earth can do that too. And I'll do this thing that I don't really want to do. But fires are just, oh, hell no.
Yeah.
I
I'm
won't
pretty
even
vocal about it
consider.
too.
They're like, why would you even do that? Right?
Yeah, it's hilarious because it's so validating, and these are just the small things.
Exactly. That's just the very basics. And then we have to go into each
All the
finger
different layers.
has a different, each finger, depending on the hand that you're on, has a different message to it. Is that right,
Yeah.
Barb?
Yes. Palmistry is analyzing how all those fingers are in the hand relation to each other. Like the fingers, I'll look at the thumb. Is your thumb proportionate with the rest of the hand? If you look at where the thumb is inserted, the average is in the middle between this point and this point. But if you have someone whose thumb is way down here, look at the grasp that they're going to have, the reach that they're going to have. And the reach that they're going to have is what they want to get done in the world.
Wow.
So that's a CEO reach when you have a thumb down here. If you have a thumb that's way up here and is held very close to the hand and it's not very proportional, or a small thumb, the thumb is our doer, wants to get things done. So if you have a small thumb or you're not comfortable with
Opening your thumb
reaching
up.
for the territory that your potential is, you're holding yourself back in confidence and getting things done. So there's a lot to the fingers as well. And the fingerprints, each one of those fingers has a meaning. And so that the fingerprint gives me the pattern to show me what the gifts and talents are. So each one of our fingers having a meaning, you're either in the inverse of something, if it's your challenge or your lesson, as I call it, or you're in the learning, the mastery of it. And it's a process. So we're not just mastering it once, we're mastering it in a spiral, as an evolutionary spiral in every layer of the hand. So we're really complicated. And when you look at the hands, it's a lot to analyze.
It really is.
Would you say for every person, is every single finger and fingerprint of that finger very key, obviously, to who they are? Or are there certain fingers for certain people that are more important than others?
Okay, so the pattern that the fingerprints makes tells me what your gifts and talents are, what you're mastering, and the challenges that you signed up for that are blind spots. And the blind spots are meant for us to do that spiritual alchemy, really working with that aspect of that finger, to be in congruency with it, to become, they really see it as an ally and engage it and integrate it. So it does give us the map of where we are doing the most work that's going to be the most important key to opening up the rest of our features. And that's how it works. If we're not willing to do that shadow work or the lesson challenge side of things, then we just don't get to the level of. And here's the thing also, you have to balance this emotional personality. We're meant to integrate 5% of our opposites. So say I have a water heart line, or you have a fire, you need to integrate 5% of the opposite, which would be air. And air for fire gives fire context. Fire tends to be, I know what my life's about. Why isn't everybody just like me? And it doesn't occur to them that anybody's different or having a different experience than they are. Or in their world, and they have to be working with other people to see, oh, they're not as quick and sharp and clever as I am. They're not as gifted. They're not as skilled. And I have to find patience to deal with them. And fire does not want to deal with patience. Earth does not want to deal with feeling. Water doesn't want to deal with the burdens of the world and doesn't have any structure and needs structure. It's just like water. You need banks of the river to channel water, right?
Yep.
So you need to have some structure, and the water has to learn structure. And so they have to learn a little bit from Earth. Oh, they're doing something that gives them value from the inside. I'm people pleasing. I'm looking for approval outside. That's not working. And it becomes a very painful experience through trial and error that wakes them up to, oh, I have to make a conscious decision not to overgive. And how do I do that? So just pointing that out to someone sometimes is enough to go, oh, it's my job to figure that out. Okay. The world's not trying to show me it's not fair for me to overgive. The world is going to let you do what you do until you figure out what's the sweet spot for you. So you have to balance it for yourself. And water wants everybody else to be just like they are, giving and loving, just as demonstrative and easy to read.
On a high level, what is the most key insights to be able to get out of your palm prints? Because I remember when you mentioned my thumbs, we were looking, there's the type of print that it is, which everybody has a certain type of print. And that's also the fingers of the
most
thumb.
of us have a combination of prints, and we'll try to get a better picture of this, but you have what is called a whorl. It looks like a target.
Oh, so Karen has which one?
The plain whorl.
Got it.
And then there is peacock, which she has some. And this one is the arch. It just looks like a hill. And the tinted arch looks like a hill with a tent pole pushed up to make it a little triangle there. So those are 4 different prints, and the majority of prints are loops. So you may have a sprinkling of other energy in there, which highlights that particular finger. And when that particular finger is elevated, like your thumb, that becomes what you're here to master. The lowest ranking print statistically in your hand was a tinted arch. And that tinted arch on that finger became your challenge and your lesson. You're here to have results in the world. That's the thumb purpose. Integrate your challenge was to figure out what your passion is, how to speak up for yourself, how to set boundaries for yourself, how to stand for yourself. And boundaries is going to be in several places of your hand as your biggest challenge. You learn that.
Okay, keep going. This is amazing.
So when we turn that challenge around, it becomes living our passion, really being able to be in congruency with that we came here to be in our passion. We have to turn that challenge, that blind spot around to be able to set that growth, that soul work, that out to get it to the place where it opens up. Oh, I can master being a results master. Okay. So results master is you can learn how the formula is for you to be successful at everything you want to do. And then there's a boot camp for that piece. So the thumb, there's a trial and error there. You have the downside and the upside. And the downside is we fail at completing things for a very long time. We have to figure out what is our formula to get things done.
And so when you start a reading and you're helping somebody look at that whole, do you start with the thumb in terms of the fingers?
I start with a hand shape. I know we talked about hand shape and the lines in the hands. I look for gift markings. Gift markings are actually other gifts and talents that are marked in the hands that are things we're working on currently. They don't always stay there. Fingerprints are embedded before we're born and they stay the same our whole life. But the lines can come and go. So the major lines are pretty much embedded by 14. You come out of the womb with 3 major lines, but they're not solid until about 14. They're still a little malleable, depending on our experience. But our experience is our consciousness communicating to our hands. So we have more neurotransmitters that are connected to our brain in our hands than any other part of the body. Why wouldn't those lines be curious to us, right? We want to know what those lines mean. So gift marking example would be, I have a star of Jupiter. Well, star of Jupiter, Jupiter is all about high achieving. And let's just say that this is the high achiever, and I'm not happy with myself if I'm not high achieving. And nothing's enough. If I'm not working all the time at getting the things that I feel need to get achieved, I am down on myself. So I have to work on balancing that aspect of that voice that says, you don't have time to rest right now. You have to work. You've got a long list of things that has to be done. And then when we set goals, my example is I'm going to go to the gym 4 days this week. And so I do that. And at the end of the week, I go, yeah, I went 4 days, but I should have done 7. So we up the bar, we sabotage ourselves. We can't see ourselves as achieving the goal that we wanted. And that also comes to play in that thumb. We have a tendency to set goals and then raise the bar on ourselves. The high achiever is there to show me that I have to come to grips with not sabotaging myself, but being okay when I'm not high achieving.
Did you have that? I'm assuming.
Yes, I do. I have
You have that. Sharon, did you have that?
So a star looks like an asterisk. Its common center has 6 lines with the common center, or 3 lines with common center. So it has 6 spokes. And the star can be on any one of these mounds, will have a gift marking meaning.
So much to look for.
So
It's fascinating.
it's so much fun to dig for everybody's goals.
So when someone comes to you for a reading, what do you end up giving them? Is it something that you do in real time, like with them, or are you getting pictures of their hands and then does it take you a certain amount of time to go through that? What's the process?
I love the question. The process that I love best is to have a phone call, assess where a person is, what they're looking for in the reading. And if they're looking for a real comprehensive understanding of their self and their direction, then my favorite way to do that is to print the hand. I can send out a print kit, give them instructions so they can print the hand. The handprint tells me volumes where hand pictures don't necessarily. So I take that handprint and say, I'm looking at all the lines and the hands, get to study that, where I'm not in their presence and I'm not trying to read off the top of my head in intuitive reading. I get to study. I get to put all the building blocks together. I get to look at the personality aspects. I get to look at the fingerprints. I get to put all that together and go, okay, this is where they're most challenged. This is where, and now I get to talk to them about where are they with that challenge? Are they dealing with it? Are they aware of it? Are they working on it? I see their game plan so that I can help them with the game they're playing, but I also have to have that conversation with them to really know where they might be stuck. And I like to break it up into a couple of readings. The initial reading where I'm printing their hand, I can go over personality aspect, what I am seeing in the shape of their hand. I validate what I'm seeing in their fingers. I'm now taking notes on everything that we are talking about. Then I come back to them after the study of the hand and do a second session where I'm weaving all of those aspects together and helping them understand what their gifts are, what their talents are, what their challenges are, and then give them a little bit of a roadmap and then talk to them about where they most stuck. Then my favorite thing to do is to coach from that map. I had a client that she was coming to see me because she really wanted to build her business, but where she was having the most difficulty was with her relationships and standing up for herself and being able to negotiate her relationship with her mother. And her relationship was so overshadowing that we ended up coaching around that for several weeks. And when she turned that around, where she gave herself permission not to listen to what her mother thought she needed to be and successfully did the work, she opened up her business. It just skyrocketed immediately after she did the work of turning around this aspect that she was most stuck on. The coaching is using spiritual tools, if you will, to assist someone to doing the alchemy, but I'm giving them the roadmap of where I hear what's presenting for you, where you're stuck. I look at the archetypes. The hand has the answers. A person gets their map, they get a printout, they get a report. I do a chart for them to show them what is what in their hand. And that conversation helps me to target what's most needed in this. What is this person really needed for direction right now?
And if someone really was very focused on relationships, I know we mentioned that in this conversation, that would be something that you could really target for them. So it could be relationships, it could be career. And what may surprise somebody, though, is something else may come as you're doing the analysis that is actually what is really the thing holding them back.
Exactly. Because if you look at your life purpose as a pyramid, and the life purpose is at the point of the pyramid, like your penthouse, the foundation of your building is your school. And you have to balance your school. So if you have 4 or more worlds, you're in the school of service. You are here to be in service. But then your fingerprint pattern tells you where and how you're going to present yourself in service. So in my case, I have the first finger and my right hand and the ring fingers. And that is a person who needs to be in service with their creative individual expression as a leader of influence in some way. And then you look at the gifts and markings in my hand, and I'm the counselor. I'm a guide for lost souls. I'm a person who has to channel their own intuitive energies to direct others, being the listener, helping people do that alchemy. So you put all those building blocks together and you get a resource map, if you will. These are your gifts. These are your talents. Here's where your hurdles are. If you turn those hurdles around, that opens up the things that seem difficult for you right now.
It's so exciting to know that information is accessible. And as you said, I think so many people spend so much of their life looking for that information. And everything that you just described about yourself, you probably can't see as the listener, but you're glowing. If you are really living that, because they are those key reasons why you're here. That
my fulfillment formula. That's
yeah.
what purpose is. It's my fulfillment formula. So if I'm living that, and I have more to do, I feel like I am choosing to align more fully with my fingerprint pattern, which would be to be more visible, to be more in leadership, to be more influential. So I have all the visionary aspects of getting it all together, but I lacks the fire to often take the action and stay directed and focused to get it down. So I'm still mastering my thumb getting results stuff. So we just have all these things. It's like when we're looking at all the different layers, we're mastering so many different complicated balancing acts. It's like we're all on a high wire act on a bicycle with a tower of challenges on top of our head trying to navigate this world. And so it's really helpful to see.
And we all have them. We all have these maps, like literally on our bodies.
I was thinking, like, isn't it funny that even today, in this day and age, they're still taking babies' fingerprints and feet prints when they're born? Right. And I never really thought about it. And I don't know if anybody else has either, but there's a reason why they do that. And that is because that is the aspect of themselves that will always remain. Their hands, but you get their fingerprints and their little footprints. And so
I advise anyone who's under the age of 50, get your fingerprints done so that before all the lines of interference show up on your hands.
Okay, well, I'm 49, so I have to do it this year.
It's just an arbitrary number, but the older people get, the harder it is for me to see their fingerprint pattern. The pattern is there, but we have a lot of interference on top of it. So I want to share a story about a client that I worked with. I don't remember how he found me, but he was lost for direction. He just could not figure out. And he came in to my session with me really, really low and confused and was just in that gaping hole of, I want direction. I want to figure out my life. I just need to have some kind of answers. And as I talked to him, I understood that he was an ER physician in some capacity. I don't remember the whole story, but he was getting in trouble. He had the ring finger purpose, which is a personality that needs to be expressing their unique individuality. And that gets to be whatever you choose it to be. So then it can change. Like for me, I was a dancer, I was a model, I was a jewelry artist, I was all these different expressions of that artistry, the art director. But this other aspect came online too. So when you have to embrace your unique self to be able to shine your light, if you will. We talked about this in Karen's hand because she has a peacock on her ring finger, which elevates it into you have that longing to be able to express yourself on a stage, that you get applause and approval. But if you come into this world like most of us do with the ring finger, we don't feel like we belong. We feel different than everybody else. And we are different from everybody else, but we internalize it as a self-critic. And our self-critic is we're not good enough to be able to shine our light and share it with the world. So it will keep us hiding out for a very long time. So that hiding out aspect is the shadow side of that archetype that wants us to really come to terms with, my art that I'm showing to the world is valuable enough that I need to get over this fear of rejection and get it out there and get the applause and approval. Once you get the applause and approval, that's your sweet spot, and you just have to have it. But prior to that, it's very hard to break through that barrier. So in this guy's case, he didn't know any of that, but I saw the ring finger and I said, so how are you wanting to express yourself? And he said, I'm in the ER all day long, and I tend to be getting in trouble a lot for breaking the tension with comedic expression. So he was being the comic in the ER, and he was getting in trouble for it all the time. And so he found his way into a dinner theater where he could start being an actor and being on stage and everything. And when I told him that he had the ring finger purpose, that he needed to find, and these I think were the words I gave, you need to find an appropriate stage to express your unique self, he about jumped out of the chair. He was like, I spent $2,000 with this agency to tell me my life direction, and you're telling me it's right here in my finger. And he was so excited and happy that he had permission to be this expression of himself that he really longed to be and wanted to be. And so it probably didn't change that he was making a living as an ER doc, but it gave him permission to pursue this aspect of himself that needed that shining of his light. To get that applause and approval was his sweet spot, and he was missing it in the ER. That was the results that was very happy for me. You never know when you're digging into somebody's hands what it means to them.
And I would say too, just even hearing what we've talked about in terms of, let's say, Karen, or even the little elements we've talked about myself in this conversation, what I know and what I hope everyone listening or watching understands, because Karen are on this seeker's journey, and we are talking with all different types of practitioners and learning about all these different modalities, we've had a lot of different readings and sessions and all of that. And everything that you are saying right now validates everything that the two of us have heard over these last however many years.
Yes.
And that, to me, what I know is part of my purpose is to show people that everybody's going to come in through a different door into the seeker's journey. And so for some people listening today, it may be talking to you and getting a hand analysis and looking into palmistry, because that sounds very relatable to them and it makes sense to them. Whereas someone else, it may be that they suffer a great loss or something and they need to go the medium way through a spiritual medium. And then that may lead them to this, and they talk to an intuitive and they hear this, but then they go and they have a reading with you and they're like, oh my goodness, they're saying the same thing and they don't even know each other. They don't know that I've had these readings. That to me is the validation that sometimes our souls need to get that permission to be who we really are. And so I love hearing all of this and hearing what Karen heard. And I know she had an abbreviated reading with you, but all of that is so on point. And sometimes need to hear it 1,000 ways.
That's right.
Make a change.
It's true, especially someone that has those 3 different heart lines.
Yeah, what does that mean? Can you talk about that?
Our emotional needs are very adaptable. Therefore, we're mirroring who we're with. And we have an innate ability to speak the language that we are with a person. And I see it often in a counselor. Other people don't have it so much. They may have the same earth heart line in both hands. And so they're a little less complicated. But when you have 3, you're not sure who you are because you're mirroring everybody else. And as a projector in my human design, I mirror everyone. So
you are too, aren't you?
Yep.
Karen, your projector is.
But even
So
just
we're
that
here to be
tidbit
in
of information, Barbara, that is interesting for me. Like, it does explain a lot, because if you would ask people at home versus, I think that's also my being the oldest of 6 kids and the pleaser that I am too. But there is that element of really adjusting myself to the people that I'm with. And then that confusion about, well, which Karen is the Karen?
And we don't really think about it. We just slip into
Oh.
being who we are with. And that water element is very moldable and very meldable. It reflects who we're with, and it can get lost very easily. The water personality can get lost very easily in everybody else's drama because we forget what our agenda is.
Yes.
And we get distracted by everybody else and wanting to help. So then we get distracted and don't do our own agenda. And I know that speaks to a lot of women because we definitely are the nurturers, but we also have a little bit of fire within us somewhere that if we can engage that fire that is, I'm determined to be me and to serve me too, to balance what my need to give to everyone else with my need to give to myself. And that's the hardest thing for women to do.
I would love to just touch on something that came up about talking about Richard Unger. And you mentioned him and how he was very instrumental in changing palmistry forever.
Yes.
Can you talk about how and why?
Yes. So his story was very interesting. He was studying hands for 10 years and reading all these amazing books on palmistry. And he was studying volumes and reading hands and comparing to what he was learning in the books. And his story was he was probably at 12,000 hands when he was passing by a medical library in New York City going to his selling insurance job. And he got curious about what is in that medical library. He started studying what was that there was actually markers and fingerprints for different medical abnormalities. And then he was like, okay, now what? And got really focused on that for a very long time. And then he realized there's a whole nother library that I don't have access to. And he got access to that library. And he had special permission, and we only had 8 hours in a day that he could be in there. So he was absorbing all this information. And it was like a download one day when he was looking at this is the patterns that they're understanding from the fingerprints that are markers for different mental disorders. And it was like chills came over him, and he had this extraordinary supernatural experience of a download of there's 2 parts of this map, the fingerprints and the personality. The fingerprints are a soul level imprint, and we need to understand what they mean. He already knew there was context for the fingers, but then he had to analyze and it was like, it all came to him. So he started testing it out. And then when he had his formula and he was figuring it out by doing readings with people and understanding what is your experience with this finger being with this energy on it. And then he started testing it out with counselors and therapists, and he was getting the same results, and it was confirmation. Then he founded the Institute to teach this particular system. I don't know that it was out there before that. I think he was the founder of this particular system. That's why they changed forever, because he gave a whole nother meaning of how to read what's in our hands. So you've got a personality piece of the map and you've got the soul's agenda piece of the map, and they're working together. They're always pulling us forward into it. But our personality has to change. It has a growth opportunity to be able to step into the fingerprints, soul level calling. So it's a process. If you work on that relationship stuff, that's one of the balancing acts. If you work on each one of the fingers that's presenting in your hand as a gift, that's one of the things. If you're working on your school, balancing your school, the person who has 4 worlds in their hands that is in service, they're learning the difference between this and sacrifice.
Assuming too that right hand versus left hand, there's all kinds of differences as well.
We look at the right hand as what we're showing to the public. You're shaking hands with your right. It's our outer personality. The left hand is more of our private personality and what we may be keeping to ourselves. They also can have a difference in your left and right emotional self. And like you said, you have an earth in one hand and a fire in the other. You're balancing those two, or you're shifting back and forth from those two different personalities, given the circumstances that you're in, what it calls for. You may be in your fire at work far more than you are in your personal life. In your personal life, you need rest, solo, you need time alone, and you need to restore by being alone and bringing it all together and contemplating it and processing it before you can even express your feelings about something.
So true.
So that makes your fire a little more complicated.
Wow. It's
Right? This is
unbelievable.
just so incredible. I just feel like this is like tip of the iceberg
Yeah.
of all of the things that you know. And the other thing to share is, Barbara, you also teach numerology as well. Is that right?
Yes, I just started doing that recently because I was longing to learn something else. And I found that was a great mirror for learning about myself too. I felt like there was a lot to numerology that people don't know about that can help them see their future or see what they're working on, their challenges. For me, I was always curious why everyone around me seemed to have more sense of business and understanding how money worked. And I wasn't interested. And I was like, why am I not interested in money? And I realized in my numerology that I had no eights in my numerology whatsoever until you got to the last pinnacle of my life was all about the eights. And it was all about, okay, you got to master this whole business thing and get to where you're really reaping the rewards of all this hard work you've put in. It was like, okay, why don't people know about this? These are the different things that you can learn about yourself. There's challenges that you're here to master. There's different periods of life. And it explains our midlife crises, and they almost always show us where our Saturn return is going to be showing up in our life. And you start looking at all those different mirrors and reflections of ourselves, and you get different ways of seeing how you're here to help.
I just love these layers, these modalities, and how they validate one another. And then you can go deeper into who you are and your whole soul's purpose, your life purpose, all of by better understanding yourself through these modalities.
Yeah. And I think that people who might be even a little bit shy in stepping into this world can feel a sense of more security in a way, because there is a science, to your point, Barbara, all of the work and study that has gone into that. You are using your intuition, you are downloading in your own way messages to give to people, but you're using this tool that feels very tangible, I think, to people, so that there's that anchor of, oh, okay, so this is based on numbers. It's based on my hand. I think a lot of people are comfortable with astrology for that reason as well, because it's more of a tangible.
It's a tangible science and a lot of reliability and accuracy in it. So it appeals to our analytical mind.
Yeah. And to Karen's point about intuition, how much of that plays a role in utilizing these different resources?
Thank you for asking. It was elusive to me to figure that out at first because I couldn't identify how my intuition came online because it didn't look like anybody else's. What I realized is that I start to intuitively ask the questions when I have a client that will bring out how I can help. And it will also, it puts all those different building blocks together and intuitively shows me where to support someone. And it just comes through me. And then when I'm working as somebody's hand live in a reading, when I'm with a person, I often channel whatever questions they ask. It just flows through me. That's the intuitive part. And often I just have an intuitive hit, like somebody will sit next in front of me and I see water and air in their hand, but I'm feeling their fire. And I'm like, I don't know where your fire is, but I'm feeling your fire. And so I can't see it in the visual of the training from the archetypes in the hand, but I'm feeling their fire. So I ask them, are you a person that has to be passionate about what you do? Oh, yeah. Can you do something that you're not passionate about? No. And so I qualify with questions to understand how much is dominant in their character. And often I'm just amazed at what comes through. And I'm amazed at how many challenges we give ourselves and all these different layers that we're balancing in this life. It really shows me how complicated we are. And I love playing the detective, figuring where's a person's fulfillment formula, helping them live it.
So if someone wants to work with you, what is the best way to go about that?
I feel like a good starting place is just a phone call, and you can book a phone call with me on my calendar. And it would be just an introductory call as I assess where you're at. If you're local, we can meet. If we're not local, I can send out a print kit. Just have to have that initial conversation to see, are they interested in a comprehensive? Are they interested in putting their toe in the water? So it's essential for me to find out how a person needs the help. And then I give them some choices. You can do a comprehensive report with me where I really study your hand, and we have 2 sessions in depth where I get to hear your story and integrate it into the reading. Or if you just want me to figure out your fingerprints so that you have a understanding of what your hurdles are and your challenges, what your gifts are. Naming it is a lot. Clarity, it gives us a sense of validation. But it's not the deeper, satisfying coaching that helps as much as I am capable, or my full potential, if you will.
The transformative work. That's really the deep dive.
Yeah. And people who are local, I do a number of fairs, and I'll do just a half an hour reading there, but I can get to look at their fingerprints, and then we can go to phone or Zoom calls after that and do coaching after that.
We will have all of your information within our show notes. But just, I want to say that it's calendly.com/Barbara Gale. And the phone number for Barbara is 512-961-2594. And people can also find you on Facebook at Barbara Gale Divine Purpose Mentor, and on Instagram at Palm Science 88. And again, I'm just so grateful.
And thank you so much.
And I'm so grateful to Karen for connecting you to me and to everybody listening and watching, because there's so much to learn and really connect or reconnect with who we really are and live our purpose here.
I really want people to understand that from my readings is that you have a setup that came in to work on. And so you have a concept of your self-identity from a personality aspect. And you're here to transcend that into your soul's agenda. It's not limiting you to that self-concept. And it really points out how we set ourselves up to think these things about ourselves and believe them. And now it's our turn to go, oh, that's just my personality. I get to transcend into who I really am. These are who I came to be. And that's what I choose to be able to help people do.
I love that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your support and all your wonderful questions.
This was
so fun.
This was so cool. I will be reaching out. I want to do this.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited about what y'all are doing, and thank you for making me a little part of it.
Oh,
Thank you for having me. Bye.